today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her latest history-making victory, her history-making win over fellow champion Erika Cruz of Mexico, becoming the featherweight division's undisputed champion, boxing champion Amanda Serrano is planning on making a return to mixed martial arts.
I don't want her to go to MMA. I want her to stay.
Amanda Serrano, the undisputed featherweight champion and number 3 pound-for-pound best boxer in the world, number 2 on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, said Friday she is planning on making a return to mixed martial arts.
At some point.
Serrano, 34 years old, has fought in mixed martial arts before, holding a record of 2 wins, no losses with 1 draw, and a 5-0 record in Nogi Jiu-Jitsu. She last fought in Jiu-Jitsu in 2019 and in MMA in 2021 when she beat Valentina Garcia by submission on the Icon Fighting Federation 7 card.
I remember in 2018, ahead of the Yamila Reynoso fight for what was the vacant WBO title at 140 pounds, Amanda expressed that it would be her final year in the sport of boxing, that she intended to go all in into mixed martial arts.
Hindsight being 2020, it's a good thing that she didn't. It's a good thing that she stuck around a little while longer, because we never would have got the Katie Taylor fight, and she would have never got to make history as the featherweight division's first undisputed champion.
First in the 4-belt era.
First undisputed champion of Puerto Rican descent. She made history on more than one front.
It's a good thing that she stuck around.
A lot has happened since then. Some relationships ended and some were formed. She went into business with Most Valuable Promotions, and they've been paying her well, and allowing her to make the history that she's always wanted to make. In truth, I don't want Amanda Serrano to go nowhere. I want her to stay in the sport of boxing.
A ways back, you saw an influx of female boxers like Amanda Serrano, like Heather Hardy, crossing over from boxing into mixed martial arts because they weren't getting paid the way they wanted to get paid.
Amanda Serrano did it, Heather Hardy did it, Ava Knight did it. I think Clarissa Shields still means to do it later on this year. I think she means to go back to the PFL.
More recently, we saw Firuza Sharapova try her hand at mixed martial arts. She was in the octagon.
It's unclear when Serrano would return to mixed martial arts and which promotion she would fight under. In the past, she has fought on the Combate Americas and Icon cards, but her promoters, Jake Paul and Nikisa Bedarian, signed deals to have minority equity stakes in the PFL, the Professional Fighters League. Her next boxing match is set, a rematch with Katie Taylor in Dublin, Ireland, on May 20th. Amanda is one of the greatest boxers of all time. She has uniquely demonstrated success in MMA and Jiu-Jitsu as well, like no other boxer to date. Bedarian said in a text message to ESPN, she is focused on her rematch with Katie Taylor, but has a deep desire to compete in the cage and Jiu-Jitsu again.
Amanda's ambitious.
Maybe it's selfish. Maybe it's just the boxing fan in me that doesn't want her to go nowhere. I always interpreted Amanda's endeavor into MMA as coming from a need, that the sport of boxing wasn't paying the girls right, so she did what she could to get her money elsewhere. But now that she's making good money, why cross over?
At the height of her popularity.
We are actively discussing her options for those returns, Serrano said. In a subsequent tweet, she would leave decisions about where she fought in MMA to Most Valuable Promotions, which is run by Paul and Bedarian, and that I just fight. LOL.
And looks damn good doing it.
I want to say that Amanda Serrano is one of the best-dressed fighters in the world, certainly the best-dressed featherweight. I want to say that even though it's selfish of me, I don't want her to go to the octagon. I want her to stay in the sport of boxing.
It's just how I feel.
Serrano is one of the most accomplished boxers, male or female, in history. She has won world titles in 7 weight classes, and on Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, became an undisputed champion for the first time, beating Erika Cruz by way of a unanimous decision for the featherweight title. She'll move up in weight to fight Taylor in May for Taylor's undisputed lightweight titles. Serrano and Taylor headlined at Madison Square Garden on April 30th last year.
And the fight lived up to the hype. If anything, it exceeded expectations.
Raised the bar and helped show the world that you can put 2 female fighters, 2 good ones, as a main event at a historic venue, a historic location like a Madison Square Garden, and they won't disappoint. They'll put on a show.
They did.
Amanda moved on from that, won the IBF title from Sarah Mahfoud, won the WBA title from Erika Cruz, made history, became her division's undisputed champion. She's more popular now than she was before, so why exit?
Maybe she feels she's done all she can do in the sport of boxing and there's not much left.
When people look back on this era's fighters, You know, what's supposed to be the Mount Rushmore of female boxers in this particular era, Cecilia Brækhus, the then unbeaten, undisputed welterweight champion who reigned as an undisputed welterweight champion for a long time. 24 title defenses.
10 of the 24 being undisputed title defenses.
She defended the undisputed crown 10 times successfully. All the history that Cecilia Brækhus helped make for the sport in her native Norway, the history that Clarissa Shields helped to make in the amateurs and the pros, Katie Taylor,
Olympic gold medalist, undisputed champion, and Amanda Serrano, the 7 division.
the first undisputed featherweight champion in the four-belt era, and the first undisputed champion of Puerto Rican descent.
Amanda Serrano will be ranked amongst the most influential, important fighters of this era.
She's finally getting the accolades and the praise that she wasn't getting before. So why leave now for mixed martial arts? I mean, why start over?
The move to mixed martial arts, at least to me, seemed like it was coming from a need to branch out and do other things because boxing wasn't paying girls the way they wanted to get paid.
Certainly things have changed since then. The pay scale still needs improvement, though, for what it's worth. Amanda is making more money now than she was before.
She's certainly more popular now than she was before.
There is a crop, a cycle, a wave of unbeaten up-and-comers in today's super bantamweight and featherweight divisions, and I wouldn't mind it at all to see Amanda Serrano stay in the sport and defend her undisputed crown against those unbeaten up-and-comers.
Amanda's not old, she's only 34.
But alas, even I can see how a fighter, as accomplished as Amanda Serrano is, might be a bit fatigued, might feel that she's done all she can do in the sport of boxing, and there really ain't that much left.
She wants to do something new.
And I get it. I'm just not happy about it.
So call me selfish.
But Amanda seems a very ambitious girl, and that shines through inside and outside of the boxing ring. Men's welterweight news, a fight finally got made, if you can believe that.
The welterweight division's usually a bit of a dud these days.
But yesterday it was made official that on April 29th, late April, Stanionis will be defending his WBA regular welterweight world title against unbeaten up-and-comer Virgil Ortiz in what is a battle of the unbeaten, set to go down as a Golden Boy promotion show on the DAZN platform.
DAZN that got a lot of shtick a couple of days ago due to their price hike.
Their price hike moving forward for those who are not already subscribed to the platform. If you paid for the year, like I did, you ain't got to pay nothing extra for all these shows that are coming up, Ortiz versus Stanionis included.
Wood versus Lara this weekend.
A fight that is almost guaranteed to deliver fireworks. A fight that is almost guaranteed to end in a violent knockout, which, let's be honest, that's what the bloodthirsty fight fans want.
Are you not entertained?
Aren't you? Here you have Stanionis, and what is a high-risk fight against the volume puncher and a very strong guy, very big guy for welterweight. He's coming off his big win over then unbeaten up-and-comer Radzov Butaev, a guy who's not an easy out in what wasn't an easy fight. The same applies to Virgil Ortiz. He's coming off his win over unbeaten Michael McKinson, a crafty boxer, a crafty southpaw. That was a battle of the unbeatens, and so was this.
You don't like this fight?
You don't like Wood versus Lara? Lee Wood, who was involved in last year's Fight of the Year winner, the Conlon fight that ended in a dramatic knockout, the ebbs and flows and drama of that fight. You're not big on Lee Wood? You're not big on Mauricio Lara?
You don't like the way he knocks people out?
You're not big on Stanionis versus Ortiz? You're not big on Wood versus Lara? You don't care for Joshua versus Franklin?
And Taylor versus Serrano too? That ain't your cup of tea.
So maybe you're not that big a boxing fan and you don't actually deserve a seat at this table. You don't actually need to take part in this conversation because that's a pretty solid schedule of fights in and of itself.
Wood versus Lara this weekend.
Joshua versus Franklin, Stanionis versus Ortiz.
Cordina versus Rakhimov.
And what about Bam Rodriguez? You don't like Bam Rodriguez.
But you're a boxing fan.
You don't like Taylor versus Serrano too.
But you're a boxing fan.
So maybe you're a boxing fan that has one of those agenda things going on. One of those agenda kind of deals to where no matter what DAZN puts out, you're going to trash it because you're enamored with some other banner, some other platform.
Some other schedule of fights.
Whose schedule are we talking about, though? The PBCs? The one where almost every halfway decent fight they're putting on is behind a paywall?
$80 a pop for almost every single fight they're putting on.
Benavidez versus Plant, that's going to be $80. Errol Spence Jr. versus Keith Thurman, yet another $80. You got the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight.
If it actually happens.
The Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz fight, a former champions.
If it actually happens.
You're telling me that you don't like DAZN's price hike. In your opinion, it's not value for money, but paying approximately $300.
That's 2 times an annual DAZN subscription.
Paying $300 for what are 4 fights. Just 4 fights. That's value for money, in your opinion. You're telling me you ain't got it for an annual DAZN subscription, but you're going to shell out $75, $80 4 times.
For just 4 fights.
Nowhere near a year's worth. You know what I think? I think that's bullshit. I don't think you pay for anything. I don't think you pay for DAZN fights, even though you still watch them. And I don't think you pay for these fights.
I think you're a fucking freeloader.
I think you're just a thief. Another one of these bums, fire sticking everything you watch, pretending to be a customer, pretending to be outraged about DAZN's price hike when you don't pay for anything anyway.
You're a bum.
You're a freeloader. You can't give a content review, a customer review, when you're not a customer, when you're not actually purchasing the content.
And there's no way that these critics are customers, because you're not going to tell me you're willing to shell out approximately $300 for this schedule of fights, but DAZN's shows, most of which aren't behind a paywall.
As a matter of fact, I don't think any of their shows are behind a paywall. We know that Joshua versus Franklin, that's not going to be a pay-per-view, and the other fights.
You're talking about, what, $20 for a month subscription if you're not already subscribed. But if you don't want to have to pay month to month and you want to save some money, you just spend, what, $150?
That's 2 times less than what you'd be paying to see these 4 fights. Just these 4 fights.
Because this isn't a year's worth of boxing. This isn't a year's worth of content.
It's not. You're telling me you're not a fan of Wood versus Lara. You're not a fan of Joshua versus Franklin.
You don't care for Cordina versus Rakhimov. You don't care for Bam Rodriguez.
You're not interested in Bivol versus Buatsi when they announced that.
And you don't care for Taylor versus Serrano.
You don't care for Ortiz versus Stanionis, and I suppose you're not a fan of Canelo Alvarez.
Well.
You don't sound like a boxing fan to me. You don't sound like any boxing fan that I've ever heard of, because there's something in that schedule for everybody. And if you're telling me that you're not a fan of Canelo Alvarez, the biggest draw in boxing right now, at least in this part of the world.
You don't represent a consumer, a customer of any kind, not in this market, because if nobody else moves the needle, that guy moves the needle. And you're telling me you don't shell out cash to see him fight.
You're in the minority.
I mean, that's how demographics and statistics work. If you're telling me you're a boxing fan, but you're not a fan of Canelo Alvarez, that puts you in the minority of boxing fans that don't watch him. Because when it comes to boxing fans, he's got the most paying customers.
He's got the most. You think he was in that Super Bowl commercial this past weekend by accident?
Wasn't Gervonta Davis, wasn't Errol Spence Jr., either of the Charlo brothers. It wasn't David Benavidez.
Wasn't Deontay Wilder. Wasn't Tyson Fury.
If you want to be obtuse and you want to act stupid, go on, act stupid. But act stupid by yourself, because you're not convincing anybody around here.
Canelo Alvarez wasn't in a Super Bowl commercial this past weekend by accident. It's because he moves the needle. It's because when it comes to boxing in this part of the world, he's the face.
And you're telling me that you're not a fan and you don't watch him.
And you don't pay for his fights. Well, here's a newsflash. That puts you in the minority by default. Because the guy with the most fight fans that pay to see him fight, whether they're at home watching it on pay-per-view or in attendance, the guy with the most paying customers in pugilism in America, it's Canelo.
Yeah, you don't pay to see Canelo like everybody else. You pay to see Benavidez versus Plant, Spence versus Thurman.
Yeah, fucking right you pay for those fights. Listen, the addition of Ortiz versus Stanionis to what is the already existing DAZN schedule just beefs it up even more, because that's a great fight.
And if you don't think so, maybe it's because you're not really that big a boxing fan.
Just in keeping with the theme of all things DAZN, Canelo Alvarez is set to take a pay cut by facing Ryder in Mexico, says Hearn. That was anticipated. The money south of the border,
It's not the same as the money north of the border, even if he gets a lot of crowd participation.
though he can afford it. If anyone can, he can. Hearn said, it's not done yet, but Ryder in May is the plan. He's coming back from the injury, and Ryder's the first mandatory that he's got at 168. Ryder is the WBO interim champion. He's happy for that fight, so now it's just where. It will probably be USA or Mexico. I think Canelo would like to do a fight in Mexico, but it's a pay cut. We are thinking somewhere in Guadalajara, but it's still a big difference when you look at the gates.
Yeah, because the money north of the border is very different from the money south of the border.
But if anybody can pull it off, if anybody in the sport in this part of the world can afford to take a pay cut and still make a fuck ton of money, it's Canelo Alvarez, especially in Mexico.
He can afford it.
Hearn added, John Ryder beat Danny Jacobs for a load of money in February of last year, did a deal with George Warren for a load of money to fight Zach Parker, thank you very much, and now he's going to fight Canelo Alvarez by
spanking Frank Warren's unbeaten super middleweight. He positioned himself for this fight. It was supposed to be Demetrius Andrade, but he reportedly suffered a quote-unquote injury.
So John Ryder ended up standing in his place and spanking Frank Warren's boy. The Frank Warren fanboys, they don't like that none too much. They don't bring it up.
Frank Warren has fanboys.
Not really. Those are just overzealous Tyson Fury fans, which makes them Frank Warren fans by default because he promotes him.
What a bizarre group of people.
Indeed. I said to him, if you beat Danny Jacobs, wow, you're going to make a fortune. And then I couldn't get anything going for him. Then the Zach Parker fight came up, which was a bit of luck, really, and won it. And now, hopefully, he's going to get the Canelo fight, but there's still a bit of work to be done. I think this week, hopefully, we can announce.
Canelo versus Ryder is going to be an action fight. John Ryder is a characteristically aggressive mid-range to inside fighter and a southpaw. He's going to push the envelope on Canelo.
Try to. He's going to push the pace, at which point Canelo Alvarez will employ his trademark counter-punching. Canelo Alvarez has always fared,
for the most part, against aggressive guys that give him a lot of countering opportunities. He's done fairly well.
Aesthetically, the fight will be entertaining because John Ryder, he ain't looking for no boxing match. He's looking to slug, and Canelo will be able to oblige him. Aesthetically, the fight will be an entertaining fight to watch for those Mexican fans if it does end up landing in Mexico, where the fight itself will be more of an event than it would be on this side of the border. Not because it's John Ryder, but because Canelo's returning home. He hasn't fought there in years.
Still questions as to whether or not this is going to be billed as a pay-per-view, because you see what Eddie Hearn said.
Even if you can get a lot of people to come, and I'm sure that they can, south of the border, the gate revenue ain't the same. Would they look to compensate for what they're not making at the gate by billing this as a pay-per-view? It's certainly an option.
You'd have to really spruce up the undercard, though. You'd have to have some familiar faces on there to help sell it.
And even then, Canelo might still have to take a pay cut because it's in Mexico.
The money ain't the same.
But delivering this hometown fight to the fight fans, given the amount of time Canelo spent fighting abroad, to Canelo, it may be worth it.
It's intrinsic value.